Welcome to the 143rd Annual Royal Ulster Academy Exhibition here in Belfast in the Ulster Museum. I'm thrilled and delighted to be joined by Christy Keeney, ceramic artist, musician and painter. Christy, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much.
Christy, you're originally from Donegal.
Yes.
And you began your interest in ceramics and your studies in Limerick, I believe.
Yeah.
So how did that all evolve?
Well, I started off in Letterkenny. There was a 2-year, I did 2 years foundation and a first year in Letterkenny. There was a regional college. They had an art department there. I wanted to move to another college, and I went. I looked at a few. I was looking at Belfast, and I looked at Limerick. So I thought I'll go for Limerick, and I did a 3-year BA course in Limerick in the ceramics department, and the last year you had to make up a project for your final year show, and I was very interested in looking at people in Limerick. I was fascinated by the characters that I met in Limerick, so I got my camera and I would go onto the streets and take photographs of people. And especially on the weekend, there was a farmers market where farmers would come from all around the area outside Limerick and put up their stands and sell their wares, you know. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to go down and see if I can get some photographs. And so when I went down, I had my camera on my shoulder, and I didn't have to wait long until people came up and said, "Will you take me photograph?" You know, because they thought I was one of the from the newspaper, you know. So I got some really good photographs, and one photograph in particular was this young boy. He must have been about 9 or 10, and I used to carry these glasses, you know, in my pocket. They were antique glasses, and round antique glasses, and I said, "I'll take your photograph if you wear these glasses." So he put them on, and he made this funny face, and it was a great shot. And then I would take the camera back, develop the photographs, and then work from the images that I got and make them into 3-dimensional ceramics.
And did you always like clay? Was that always something that you always wanted to work in?
When I went to college, first of all, I was intended to be a fine art painter. The ceramics teacher there was Tom Agnew.
Yes, I know Tom.
Tom was a great inspiration because he was so good on the wheel. And when I saw him, I just fell in love with ceramics. And it was only purely because of Tom that I probably went down the ceramics line. But I struggled as a thrower.
Yes.
I did get some work in a pottery in Buncrana, and I threw there during term time. And I realized throwing wasn't what I wanted it to be, because it was very much production sort of line, and sitting there every day throwing pots, it just I lost the sort of love of throwing. So then when I went back to Limerick, I said to the teacher, I said, I don't want to do throwing anymore. I want to be a sculptor. And he says, "That's fine." And then that's how I carried on, you know, being the sculptor.
And you captured beautifully some of the characters I've seen in your earlier work. You know, the expressions and even the positions, you know, of the body language. You know,
yeah.
It seems that figures and portraiture, you know, was something that you were drawn towards.
Yeah, I was very interested in the characters, and it was. I don't know what it was, because when I was in Donegal, you know, Donegal people tend to be very introverted, you know. Going to Limerick, they were a completely different sort of person. They were really extroverted, and like they were loud, and I remember saying to one of the students, I said, "You know, I don't feel Irish." And they said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, because I've never seen these people before," and being from Donegal, you know, it was a very different sort of type of person. So I mean, like every county has its own typical types, you know.
That's right.
So anyway, that's what I spent that the last year doing was building up a collection of work of figures.
And they were quite representational. Your earlier work was quite representational, wasn't it?
Yes.
So your work was quite figurative.
It was very figurative, yeah. And then I went to work in Connemara for a year, and I worked with a potter there, Seamus Laffin, and he gave me the space in the studio to do my own work while I did some throwing for him. I took a visit that year down to Limerick again, and I met the sculptor teacher there, and he said, "What are you up to?" And I said, I'm working in Connemara. I've got no real plans." And he says, "Would you ever think of trying for the Royal College, you know?" And I said, "Oh, I'd never get in there, you know." He says, "Well, you've nothing to lose, just give it a go." So anyway, I applied and got accepted.
Must feel very proud.
Proud, yes, and more sort of a bit scared, you know. Going to London was a big thing, you know. I remember the first time I went to London, I would sit in a bus and start talking to people beside me. When I went to the Royal College, I thought I would carry on doing the same sort of thing, going on the streets, but there was no way I could go on the... I did try and photograph people on the streets in London, and it was really difficult because I got a lot of bad
hassle.
looks, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So then I kind of concentrated that year on students. I would get to know students in the college and I would photograph them. I would make up their pieces. But while I was in the Royal College, the biggest influence I realized was being in the same space as Eduardo Palazzi, and he was a big influence on later work. Palazzi was one of the founding members of the pop art movement in Britain at the time, along with Richard Hamilton and David Hockney, people like that. Palazzi was very into collage, you know, and so he would take sort of magazines, like the Time magazine, they had sort of a front cover of a famous person, and he would have two front covers, and he would cut them up and then reverse them and change them over from one to the other, so they would create this new sort of image. And he would bring that technique into his sculpture as well. He would give the students jobs. He came to me and he said, you know, I want you to do two portraits for me, you know. And one was architect Richard Rogers. And he had one photograph where it was like a smiling face, and the other photograph was just not smiling. And he said, I want you to do these two. So I made up the sculptures, and I charged him half nothing for it. But anyway, he took the finished clay sculptures away, and he would convert them into plaster pieces, and then he would get a bandsaw or a handsaw and he would chop them all up, and then he would reverse the smiling one and the front, you know, the not smiling, and put them together and create two completely different sculptures.
So the whole idea about deconstructing
Yes.
and reconstructing.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that?
I loved it because it was like being a child again, you know. It was like playing with bricks, you know.
Yes.
Because, you know, you could move them around to suit yourself. The initial hard work was done, and then the play started, you know, with the cutting them up.
And there's something about being in that flow where you can be creative. But then again, working with clay and the challenge of getting it safely in and out of the kiln, it brings with it all sorts of concerns as well.
I didn't do any of that sort of work at the college till I left, and it was about a year. When I left college, as all students have, they have a very difficult time finding their feet again, you know. At that time in London, Margaret Thatcher was in power.
Yes.
And she had emptied a lot of the inner London schools, the secondary schools, and amalgamated them into one. So there was a lot of empty primary schools, and there was one in Elephant and Castle where a lot of students, art students, took over the whole school. And
was this for studio space?
Yeah.
Very
so
good.
Great studio space. And nobody wanted the kiln room, which was perfect for me. I got to work with my own kiln, free of charge.
Brilliant.
Nobody knew. It was sort of like we were squatting there, you know.
Yes.
But it was a great way of getting back on my feet, you know.
And how was it for you as well, within a community of artists, coming from Donegal? You know, was that a big revelation for you to know that there were others that were exploring their own creative spirits as well?
Well, most of the people that were in the school were painters and printmakers. I never really did much of that. I was mostly involved with the ceramics. I used to go into the painting studios and have chats with people, and we were all like a big family, really.
Yes.
But they didn't really sort of come to me and ask me for any advice on my ceramics, or I didn't really, it was only later on that I got into painting, but it wasn't because of being around painters or anything.
Yes, yes. I suppose another way to express. Christy, congratulations on this piece. We're sitting beside you are the recipient of the Sea Holly Award. It's a beautiful piece, An Angel by My Side. And I love the fact that it looks as if it has been deconstructed and reconstructed again. And that's something that I've noticed, particularly in your more recent work over the years. It seems to be very, very obvious. Would you like to say a little bit about how this type of work was influenced?
Well, the piece is probably in 3 sections. The first, the legs area, then the torso, and then the heads. I usually start off not knowing where I'm going with it, so I would make up the legs and I would build up to the top. And normally when I'm doing a head, I'll do maybe 2 heads and choose the better of them. But in this particular piece, I found that I couldn't really decide on which head I wanted to use, so I thought, well, I'll just stick the 2 of them on the top. Sometimes, when you do something fresh, it's like you don't know if you like it or not.
That's true. It takes time to bed in and process.
Yeah, so you have to go away. So the next day I came back and I said, yes, I know that works. And that's all that matters, if it works.
There's something in your gut, isn't there? It's instinctive, I think, as well. And there's something too about letting the material lead you,
exactly.
as well. It's malleable, and yet you can create so many things with the whole slab building technique. Is slab now predominantly the way you would construct your pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I work on a roller, on a slab roller.
Yes.
The table, basically. So I'll roll out the clay. With the feet, for instance, I'll roll out a shape, and then I'll cut it, and then fold it up, and then manipulate it into the feet, and the same with the body. The heads are made from just coiling. Some of the smaller heads that I have, I would use a mold and then manipulate the head after it's out of the mold. But the thing about the piece, when I started to look at it, I didn't know what it was about. And to me, it reminded me of somebody beside me, and the only thing I remember when I was growing up as a Catholic, that there was a big emphasis on the guardian angel,
Yes, yes.
And the guardian angel was there to protect you, from evil.
Almost like a confidant that you could talk to, but
Yes.
also could guide you as well.
Yeah.
Because they do look as if they're in conversation. There's something very, very connected between them.
Yeah, but the thing is, being a Catholic then was very important that the guardian angel was directing you towards a truth,
Okay.
So, but now as an atheist, it's still a guardian angel, but it's directing me towards my truth.
Yes, yes.
In a sense.
So it's more of a guide,
Yes.
yes, irrespective of religion or status or culture as well. The beautiful thing about these pieces as well, Christy, that I've noticed over the year, they really are to be enjoyed in the round.
Yeah.
And we're in an exhibition that has the most stunning work, paintings, ceramics, mixed media pieces, and again, when you look at the work on plinths and the ability to walk around them, there's something very, very special about that. In terms of actually selling work, I know you've been very successful. Has the scale of your work changed in terms of the dimensions?
Selling is always about where people can put the piece,
And that's, I suppose, what I'm thinking of, the scale and...
So scale does
piece.
matter. When I do sort of sell at the fairs, the first things to go are the small pieces. And but there's always 1 or 2 people there for the bigger pieces. And
because they make a real statement. They definitely do make a statement. Do you always use the same clay?
I use 2 clays. I use a crank body, it's a gritty body, and then I use a smoother body for, say, heads and
Yes.
and the features. I would use a smooth St. Thomas clay. But for things like the stand, if you want to have a wide space, you want to use a more grittier clay.
It's much more robust for slabs as well, and to allow for shrinkage or any distortion in the kiln as well. And then you're quite creative with slips as well in terms of the colour that you do use. It's usually quite minimal.
Yeah, I mean, when I put the piece in the kiln, before I put it into the kiln, I'll coat it with an ivory earthenware slip, it's called, and it's just a bag of ivory earthenware which I just sort of water up into a slip, and then I'll put that on. It's a really good surface for colour. It's like when you're whitewashing your canvas or something like that.
Yes.
So that goes into the kiln and bisqued, and when it comes out of the kiln, I'll add oxides and stains. The oxides are a manganese dioxide and copper oxide, and they're 50-50. Gives you a nice black. And I put the black all over, paint it all over, and then I rub it all away, which gives you sort of...
it highlights the lines which you want to accentuate as well.
And then over that, then I'll put the colour, and usually the oxides bleed through the colour and gives it a bit more depth. But I'm actually not a great colorist. I'm always not happy with color. It's a very difficult thing to get right, and it's like it depends which part of the kiln you're in.
That's
and
right.
The temperature that you've got to, and sometimes and materials change. Like I used to be able to get a really good vanadium, which is another great color, and over the years it's changed and it doesn't work as well as it used to, And
I suppose there's been lots of changes, or certainly increased awareness with the health and safety repercussions
of
working with clay and working with oxides and airborne dust and all of that. We would know that from teaching ceramics as well. Do you have any ambitions for creating work that could be public art?
I did a piece in Letterkenny. But it's not in ceramics. It's in stainless steel. So, and actually I made it up in balsa wood. It's a huge clock for the front of the Granion Theatre in Letterkenny. But as far as other commissions, there's a lot of work involved in public commissions, and you don't get a lot of money for it,
No, and the application process as well for funding can be very off-putting as well. I can imagine pieces like this, on a very, very large scale and maybe translated in metal, as well, as opposed to ceramic.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Palazzi would have made pieces that small, but then he would have given it over to the foundry and they would have made it. The people, he wouldn't have touched it. They would have made a huge piece for him. So in that respect, if you have the money, it would be great for the foundry.
Sponsor or the donor that would be willing to explore that further. What has been your proudest piece to date? Have you, or is it the one you're working on at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like any of my work. I don't really. I look back at the work I do, and I always see faults, and I just think, I could have done this.
Do you think that comes with hindsight and, I suppose, wisdom as well? You look at pushing it. I
mean, but then again, sometimes when I look back at very early pieces, because they have a certain naivety about them that I've kind of lost now, I think, I really like the way I did that, but it was because I wasn't educated enough with the material. But in some senses, that is a good thing. When you get to know something too well, you know too well.
You can be blasé about it as well. And then your painting as well, there's a great sense of character with your paintings as well.
Well, I started to paint because my wife gave me a set of oil paints for one Christmas, and I started to paint, and I didn't really know what I wanted to paint, and I obviously I started painting with the figure again, but it's a whole different ball game because it's like when you paint with figures, it's like you're creating a sort of a theatrical sort of environment where you've got to place people, and you've got to analyse why they're there. And
That's right, the spatial interaction amongst the characters as well.
Yeah, and the colours, all the colours have to work around, even the outside space has to work as well as the inside space. So it takes a long time to do a painting.
And would you prefer to work in clay?
I get a lot of enjoyment out of painting when it's going well, but when it's going badly, it's very, very difficult. But that's just something you have to live with.
Mm-hmm. The publication that you released, I bought a copy. Was it last year? You had
that was about 2 years ago.
Beautiful publication of your work over the years.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how that evolved.
I had this idea that I would have something to take to the craft fairs to sell. Maybe have a publication for sell it for €20 or something like that, £20. And so I got together with my friend Royal McAlinden, who's a photographer at home, and we kind of got the photographs together. And there's a publication online which you can send in your photographs to, and you can send in all the script, and they will just do all the work for you. And I can't remember what the name of them are.
So is it a bit like a photo book?
It's like a photo book thing, yeah. I sold about 5 or 6 of them, but what I do now is if somebody buys a big piece, I'll give them it for free.
Lovely idea.
But it's a difficult thing to sell because people love to
it's really like a collector's item, too, but it's a beautiful record of your work.
Yeah, it's good, yeah. And as a thing as well, is like when I look back at some of the photographs, I say, oh, I wish I hadn't put that piece in. Because at the time I liked it, but then as time goes by,
yes,
I take another view at it in a different way. So I might do another one. You have to do another one to sort of get the work that you want.
So what's next for Christy Keeney? What are you working on at the minute?
I do a lot of commissions for people. So I'm working towards ceramics fairs for next year. The good thing, because I'm turned 66, I've started to get my pension. And I get a pension from England and a pension from Ireland. So I don't have to rely as much on the selling aspect. So my plans are to concentrate more on the one-off pieces and not worry about the price, and start to play a bit more and have a bit of fun with my work.
And I mean, that's the ideal scenario, isn't it, really, to enjoy it? Because sometimes when you're under pressure to create and work very, very hard, you can actually resent the very thing that initially brought you joy.
Exactly.
And that's when mistakes happen. And when you actually can, I've seen artists go down that route where, just if you're producing and producing, there's no joy, no spirit, no energy.
Yeah, and you forget how to be creative.
Yes.
And creativity comes out of nowhere, really. Sometimes when I'm in the studio, I'll look at, I've got a lot of seconds in my studio, and so sometimes I'll look at the work side by side. Now I would say, oh, those two pieces really work together, So it gives me an idea for a new piece, and so those moments don't always come your way. So creativeness, if you're so concentrated on just trying to get work out and all that, you haven't time to sort of sit and stare.
And I think those times to pause are so important, particularly for the creative mind, to absorb the process, to, enjoy it, be challenged by it as well.
Yes.
And I think that's where the real excitement comes as well, when you look at something new or look at it with different eyes.
Yes.
I think that's a very, very healthy place to be. So any ambitions left at this stage that you'd like to?
I really just live in the moment as much as possible,
That's a good way to be.
So you can never predict what's going to come, so I don't have ambitions like that. I never really had ambitions. I just followed my nose, really. And
you've been very, very successful, in when I think of the work that you have in private and public collections as well, and some very esteemed people as well, that your work is really valued, Christy, and it must make you feel good that it is valued.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of an abstract concept, like because the work, is supposed to represent me, but as long as I have this problem with me and who am I, basically, I think that we all struggle with our identity, and sometimes, people say nice things, but it's hard to take on board, what
Yes.
the real sort of essence of what is going on, So
How important is it to be featured in this exhibition, the Royal Ulster Academy?
yes, I mean, I love the idea. It reminds me of when I got my first piece into a gallery. I was in Limerick, and I went to the opening, and it was the first time I had a piece on display. And I remember standing in a corner and just watching people go and look at my work, and it gave me a feeling of I'm not there anymore. It's like my work is doing all the talking for me now.
The work speaks for itself.
Yeah, and it's like an extension of me, and it's a very nice feeling to see.
It's a lovely
that.
legacy for all of us that have invested in the work of an artist.
Yeah,
it's a very
it's,
special
and
very special investment.
And people who come to me and say they've been inspired by my work, it gives me a really good feeling, because in some ways I've been inspired by so many people in the past.
Well, Christy, I could talk to you for a lot longer. It's just lovely to get an insight into your work and your humility, continued success, and most of all, continued fulfilment.
Thank you
it's
very
been an
much.
absolute joy. Thank you very, very much.